Okay, good evening. Thank you all so much for coming tonight. We really appreciate it. My name is Kim Vandenberg. I'm the Mayor Pro Tem here. And we are going to go through the general obligation bond referendum information. And so I'm not going to read all of these slides word for word. You guys can all do that yourselves, but this is kind of our agenda, what we're going to hit on tonight. Going through the presentation, if you can please hold all of your questions until the end. I will probably answer the questions as we're going through the presentation, but if not, then we're happy to stay as long as you need this evening in order to answer all of those questions. So bond facts, what are the different mechanisms of financing? So there's a few that we could use, but what is best for what we're trying to do within the village is a general obligation bond. We could do a revenue bond, but what we're building is not going to be producing revenue. We could do installment financing, which we'll go into in a little bit, but we're going to have a significantly higher interest rate, and we need more collateral for the amount that we're looking to borrow. So general obligation bonds, which will be through an increase in property tax, makes the most sense for the village. What's a bond referendum? It's where you guys within the village decide if you want to raise the funds. We're going to be doing two on the March 5th ballot. It's a transportation bond and a parks and recreation bond. When you're at the ballot, you can vote no for both. You can vote yes for both, or you can vote yes or no either way. So you don't have to do both of them, yes or no. Why is the village seeking to fund projects through general obligation bonds? The village itself is in excellent financial health. We do not have enough cash on hand to do all the projects slated at once. If we were to do this project by project, it would take us many, many years to do it. We would not get the economies of scale if we do larger projects together, and we would be fighting inflation during those years that we are trying to get these projects done. By doing a bond referendum and letting the village decide, and if it goes through, then future residents will be able to contribute towards the cost of these projects, since it'll be over a 20-year period that the bonds get paid back. Why not fund the project through taxes or loans? So the loan, an installment financing loan, again, we need more collateral. Village Hall is not going to be enough for collateral. The park's not going to be enough. And they're going to have typically a higher interest rate. If we just raise taxes, we would not be getting a bulk lump sum for us to be able to get the amount of projects done at the time that we want them done. And again, it kind of goes back to getting that economies of scale pricing and being able to avoid future inflation. This is just a list of other towns, municipalities, counties that have done bonds. So bonds are not uncommon. And then this list are ones that have actually, so this list all passed in November of 23. This list have been done in the past, but they've already started these public improvements. How long have we been discussing bonds? We've actually been discussing bonds since I started on council 6 years ago, but we really got very serious about it 2 years ago. We really were looking to try to figure out how to get the delayed Newtown Marvin roundabout completed sooner so that we weren't dealing with inflation issues. And we came up with a bond idea. And as we started thinking about it, we were looking at projects that the village has looked at being completed over the next few years. So we said, why don't we put together a bond package and try to get these projects all done? Whenever the village looks at these projects, we're not planning for today. We're not planning for tomorrow necessarily. We're planning for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years down the road. So as we're looking at projects that can be completed, we're trying to look at things in a bigger scope. Bond referendum facts, again, has there been public support of the projects? There has been. We did a survey back in 2019. We had over 1,800 surveys were mailed out. We had 333 total respondents. A significantly statistical sample size is 317. So we did have more than that. And so the responses that I'm going to go through are statistically significant and a good indicator of what the public wants. Do you want more public space? Excuse me. Do you want more parks, open space, recreation options? 77% in Marvin said yes. If you're looking at greenways, where do you want those greenways to go? You want them to connect to other greenways, nature preserves, parks. If they're going to they also want connectivity with neighborhoods, outside trails as well. So again, these are just kind of the same numbers stated in a different way. Okay, so to the actual bonds, again, there's two bonds. One's a transportation bond for $15.35 million. That's going to include roads, greenways. I'll get to the full list in just a minute. The other bond, separate bond, is a Parks and Recreation bond for $5 million. It's going to be the future, the Village Hall Park, and then future park projects that we are looking at right now. So the transportation list, it includes 6 new greenways, pedestrian safety, sidewalk repairs, Bonds Grove Church, Waxhaw Marvin Road roundabout. We would be looking to repair, repave, acquire 23 miles of roads. Those would be subdivision roads and connector roads, updated signage, wayfinding, and a private road paving assessment program. So the biggest number on here is the greenways by far. It is $9.9 million. It's a big number. So when we were looking at doing the greenways and the trails and the connectivity throughout the village, where we took these numbers from was the Parks Greenways master plan list. The master plan was completed in 2020, and the consulting company that did that project for us said, okay, if we're going to do these greenways over the next 20 years, we think this is how much each section will cost. So when we went to do the bond and figure out what we were going to include in the project list, we looked at that Greenways master plan and said, okay, the Marvin Loop per the Greenway master plan over, if we decided to do this in 20 years, it would cost $980,000 and change. We know that this is the price of one section with inflation, higher labor cost, material cost taken into consideration. So we know that these numbers are definitely inflated, significantly inflated. But we needed a baseline. We needed a place to start. And this is how we got these numbers. We just completed a section of a trail that in the Greenways master plan said it would cost $433,000. We got it done for $58,000, rough numbers, but pretty close. So we know that these numbers are definitely inflated. So if we went to a contractor and we went out to bid and we said, here are these 9 miles of trailways, quote that out for me, we're going to get a significantly lower number than this total cost price, because we are, again, economies of scale, and we're giving people significantly bigger projects to go through. Now, we also know that some of these greenways are going to be hard to do. So the greenways are probably not going to be in the first kind of passive money, and I'll get to that in a minute. But this is the project list for the greenways. What's the private road assessment program? We do have a few private roads within the village. We've had residents come to us and say, our roads are really bad. Our neighborhood can't afford to get them paved. Is there any way that we can help? So what we have done is put together this assessment program so that we're able to assist neighborhoods in being able to get their roads paved. And then they would pay us back with interest over a 5-year period. So if no neighborhoods come and ask us for this program, then none of this money would be spent. What will taking over connector roads accomplish? So connector roads, Marvin Road, Joe Carr Road, Waxhaw Marvin Road, Newtown Road, these roads will be able to reduce the speed or control the speed limit. We will be able to control the truck traffic on there, restricted truck routes, and we'd be able to have more traffic calming measures. We'd also have a standardized maintenance across all of Marvin roads. So currently we've got about 50% of roads that are in Marvin and 50% that are in NCDOT roads. And so right now, if a tree fell on an NCDOT road, good luck seeing how long it takes DOT to come out and get it off the road. If it's a Marvin road, significantly quicker response times. The only road within the village that NCDOT is going to treat for inclement weather, i.e. snow, ice, it's going to be Newtown Road. No other roads would be treated. So the village would be able to treat roads and have them be safer if we do have inclement weather. Okay, the Parks and Recreation bond project list. So the new Village Hall Park would include things like a band amphitheater, I always say that wrong, an amphitheater band shell, multi-use event lawn, space, trailhead, walking loop, covered seating. We are also putting aside, I'm actually going to skip to the next slide because it actually gives the dollar amounts here. We're going to put aside about $1 million for additional park and recreation properties. We're currently in conversations with Waxhaw. They have a parcel of property that abuts Marvin that they are looking to possibly partner up with us and do some sort of recreation type park, whether it's ball fields, pickleball. There's a lot of options there. So they're very interested. And so we're working with them to see how we can partner with them on that property. We're also looking at maybe doing pickleball courts, tennis courts at the Pocket Park at Publix. So some of that money will be able to go to that. Now, the $4 million we think is going to, well, we already know it's going to come in less than that because we just recently received a Part F grant of $500,000. And then we got an additional grant of $250,000. So we already have money going towards that project that will bring that dollar amount down that we would have to borrow from. So a lot of people don't know this. Over the past 3 to 4 years, we have collected $4 million in either federal grant money, state grant money, local grant money, legislative grants. So the village is constantly looking for money that we then don't have to turn around and raise taxes to the residents so that we can continue to get these types of projects done. And just if the bond does pass, we're not going to stop trying to find that type of money. So we already know that we've got some money coming this way. This is just a possible rendering. We don't have exactly what it's going to be. It's all conceptual right now, but this is a, an option. For the amphitheater band shell, I'm not envisioning some giant stage where we have all these bands come in. I'm looking at something that's probably more like this, that you can have a speaker series for Marsh, or you can have goat yoga, or you could do a farmer's market. Really, the possibilities here really are endless. Okay, so let's talk taxes. So our current tax rate is like 6 cents per $100 valuation. And that's that's how we get your tax rate. So right now we are 5th on the list in terms of lowest municipalities within Union County. Everyone below us is less than 5 cents, and you have to be at 5 cents in order to receive PAL bill funding, which is roads. So it's pretty safe to assume that those above, so Weddington, Mineral Springs, Fairview, and Wesley Chapel, don't maintain their own roads. So here's what everybody's waiting for. So your current tax rate is at 6 cents. And it is very important to note that over the past 10 years, 11 years, we've only raised taxes one time, and it was 1 penny. And that was to fully pay for an additional deputy that the residents wanted. So we've got a lot of stuff done on a shoestring budget. So now we're looking to do a lot more projects. And so what we're looking at, if, and these are all big ifs, and this is what I want everybody to remember, if we have to take the full 20 million, so you've got 15.35 in transportation, you've got 5 million in parks and recreation. So if both bonds pass, and if the full 20 million is utilized, this is what the tax impact would be. It would be 8 cents in the fall of 2025, and 2.75 cents in the fall of 2028. That's if both bonds pass and if the entire bond amount is needed. Now, if only transportation passes, it's 4.75 cents in the fall of 2025 and 2.75 cents in the fall of 2028. If only the park and recreation bond passes, we would be at 3.25 cents in the fall of 2025. So these are basically going to be your worst case scenarios because, and this is the next really big if. Currently, we have to utilize an interest rate of 5.344%. It's at the bottom of the slide. The state and the local government commission, or the LGC, requires us to utilize the highest tax-exempt interest rate charged for similar debt over the last 20 years. That highest tax-exempt rate was 5.344%. Currently, interest rates are right around 3.5%. I don't know if, they're going to fluctuate some, but when we're calculating the 8 cent and the 2.75 cents, we're looking at utilizing the full 20 million and at an interest rate of 5.344%. We do not think that we're going to need to utilize the full 20 million because we think a lot of the projects that we're looking at are going to come in significantly lower. And we've already seen that has happened over some projects. But we also think that the interest rate is going to be lower. So those are two really big points that people need to remember. And if we don't need to utilize the full 20 million, then we're not going to pull it. So if the bonds are approved, then you guys have said, we're going to authorize you to take up to $20 million. That doesn't mean I'm going to have to. We've been using an example, and it's a loose example of a home equity loan. So I go to the bank and I'm like, I need to do some upgrades to my house. So I don't know about how much it's going to cost. So let's do a $50,000 line of home equity line. So once I get my contractor in and gives me the quotes, I figure out it's only going to be $20,000. So I'm like, okay, great. So I only pull $20,000 and I'm only paying interest on the $20,000, and that's all I have to pay back. I'm not going to pull the full $50,000 and I'm not going to be paying interest on that. It's basically the same thing. Just because the bonds pass and the village has authorized us to go up to $20 million does not mean that we're going to. This council is only planning on using the money that's within the project list that we have and getting the bids from our contractors. And we're going to do 2 pulls of money is how I like to explain it. So the first pull of money, those are going to be neighborhood roads. It's what I like to call low hanging fruit, easy stuff that we can get done really quickly. So we're going to do that. We're going to go out for bid. We're going to get all of the numbers that we can, contingencies built in, and then we're going to pull that first pull of money. Then we're going to be working on these other projects that are going to be a little bit harder to get accomplished. And then once we have those quotes in and we have a plan on how we're going to execute those projects, we'll pull the second pull of money. And I don't think we're going to get anywhere close to the $20 million. So these numbers here, if your home has a $500,000 tax value, this is what your tax impact will be. And if it's $1 million, this is what your tax impact will be. So again, this is if we pull the full 20 million and the interest rate is at 5.344%. Big ifs. What are we basing this on? We're basing it on the tax value, not the market value. People have asked that question. We like to cover it. How is the anticipated debt payment? What is the anticipated debt payment and how is it going to be repaid? It's going to be spread out over 20 years. If we pull the full $20 million, then we're going to be paying back about 1.55 annually, and that's going to be principal and interest. And then our property tax revenues, we know is going to be able to support that debt payment. What people need to remember is that some of these neighborhoods that are being built currently, Broadmoor, Gates of Marvin, Marvin Road minor subdivision, a lot of these houses that aren't finished, when those homes are finished and they start paying taxes, your tax impact will be lower because we're going to be getting the tax revenue from those homes as well. So again, that's another reason that we're doing the bond. Okay, I just went over this 20-year high interest rate, 5.344%. That is what we're required by law to utilize whenever we're giving you guys these numbers. When we did this PowerPoint presentation back at the end of December, rates were at 3.35% to 3.4%. They're right around 3.5%, so they're fluctuating a little bit, but not close to the 5.344%. Current financial status highlights. I'm going to kind of go through this pretty quickly. The gist of this is we're in very good financial health. We do have an unassigned fund balance of $1.88 million. People are said, well, why don't you just use that to pay for some of these projects? Well, we can use some of it, but we definitely can't use all of it or close to it. One of the reasons is, or a big reason is, we get paid once a year, and that's your property taxes. So there are a lot of projects throughout the year that we actually have to float money before we're getting that money paid back. And we do have 2 very large grants that we are going to have to front money for up front. So we're going to be having to dip into this unassigned fund balance in order to be able to pay for those things. So unfortunately, I mean, we'll be able to pay for a few things, but not much, and not high dollar price things. Why is financial health important when we're talking about getting a bond? Really, it's because our rating will come back higher, which means we'll get a lower interest rate. So right now, not our liquidity. This is not liquidity. This is our net position. So these are all of our assets. We've got $14 million plus in assets. As we continue to take over roads and have sidewalks and easements, our net asset position will go up. Again, this is not liquidity. We do not have $14 million in cash sitting in the bank. I just went over this. You guys can take a look at that slide. Okay, these next couple of ones. So Marvin's in blue, benchmarks in red. Basically, this is just to show how we measure against other municipalities. You guys can go through this yourself. We measure really well. Our financial health is solid. And so financial health is often determined by fund balance levels. Again, if these bonds pass and we go out and we're trying to get a credit rating from different agencies, so that we can have a lower interest rate. So this is really important to have good financial health. So why not let citizens pick and choose each project on a list on the ballot? Creating separate ballot questions has a lot of flexibility issues. It's an administrative nightmare, and it's very expensive to do this. Being able to bundle these projects together gives the village more flexibility as we're trying to implement these projects. And we're not having to spend as much money going through the whole process. How can I be guaranteed that projects listed on the educational material will be implemented? This current council is absolutely committed to getting these projects done. These are big ones. So unless there's a major shift in priorities due to unanticipated factors, then these projects are going to get done. State statutes are very specific about what can be included in a transportation bond and what can be included in a Parks and Rec bond. So if in a few years, there's different people on this council, they can't swing their priority and decide to fund a wastewater treatment plant because it would not fall into the buckets that we've laid out for the village, transportation or Parks and Rec. If the referendum questions are approved, how quickly can projects begin? I always like to joke, if they pass, then we're going to shut down the village immediately. We're going to get everything paved. We're going to do everything as soon as possible. I know that that's not feasible to do, but I want everybody in the village to be able to see what their money is going towards and be able to see the projects get complete and be able to start enjoying them. In reality, if the bonds pass in March, it'll be probably the fall before we would actually get any of the money or be able to then pull the money. So from the time that the bond passes to the time that we're able to pull our first pull of money, We will be working to do RFPs, RFQs, get all of our ducks in a row so that we're able to then hit the ground running as soon as we're able to get the funding for it. Obviously, you're going to have, factors that weigh in, whether it's, the bidding process, whether working with outside agencies. So some of that stuff could get slowed down, but this would be top priority for us to try to get done as soon as possible. What happens when all the projects are complete? Once all the bonds mature in 20 years, will the tax rate revert to its pre-bond tax rate? I don't know, because I'm not going to be here in 20 years. I don't plan on being on council in 20 years. I would guess that it's probably not going to go back down to 6 cents, but probably not stay at whatever the raised amount is. You're going to have costs associated with the projects, ongoing costs that are going to be associated with the projects that we're doing. But, a future council may decide to increase that. I don't know. It's going to have to just wait and see when the time comes. But really, a lot of that, depends on you as the voters and who you're voting into office. And at every election, I would find out everybody's view, if these bonds do pass, what their views are, if their, priorities are shifting, that type of stuff. I would absolutely be asking those questions. Who monitors to make sure that we're spending the bonds appropriately in the way that we said? The LGC, which is the Local Government Commission, they're the ones that approve the borrowing capacity, and they also looked over the project list, and they were like, yep, this works, yep, this works. So we have to stay within those guardrails to make sure that we're doing that. But the other guardrail is you guys as the village. If you see something that you don't like, or if you see something that you've got questions about, then we want you to come and ask us. But the LGC will definitely do those independent audits to make sure that we're in compliance and that our fiscal health is still really good. What happens if the bonds don't pass? The first sentence says projects could be delayed or canceled. My response to that is projects will be delayed and will be canceled. We don't have money to do these projects, unfortunately. And to get a lot of these projects done, we were relying on the bonds. So if the bonds don't pass, and again, it's kind of a mandate from the village of if these bonds don't pass, then we don't really want anything. We're good with status quo. So, a lot of stuff is just going to be canceled completely, and other ones may be delayed. Now, I will be happy to take any and all questions. So if you can just let me know.
Hello. Are you concerned about using survey results from 2019 as the basis to what the villagers want 5 years later?
I mean, I'm always concerned with results that we're looking at, but am I concerned in a bad way? No, I'm not, because at the time, this is what people said that they wanted. So we spent 2 years going over this information and looking at what was going to be included on project list. And we didn't have anybody come in at any point to say, you know what, I don't like that on that list. Maybe it should go over here, or I don't want that on a list at all. So no, that's not concerning.
If the bond doesn't pass and taxes increase regardless for the projects, will there be more villager input on the projects themselves?
I mean, I don't know if I don't know what's going to, if the bonds don't pass, are taxes going to increase? I don't know. Council hasn't talked about it. I know that we can't sustain 6 cents forever. And again, we've got a lot of things done on a shoestring budget of 6 cents. But again, yes, we always want input. I think that is one thing that this council is always open to. And we make ourselves readily available, whether it's 2 meetings a month, 2 coffees with council a month, my cell phone's on the website. You can email us. If coffee with council dates aren't convenient for you, let us know when you can come in. So yes, we will always take into consideration what the village wants. But again, if the bonds don't pass, that's a mandate, I kind of think, to me, that says Maybe the villagers don't want anything. Maybe the people in the village just don't want anything and they're good with status quo.
If the bond does pass and the projects aren't completed to satisfaction, how will it be handled then?
Well, I think we need to define what satisfaction means. So, I think we would probably take that case by case. And if somebody had a complaint, we would obviously listen to it and we would talk to contractors with what their complaints would be. And we would see if we could get it, done to satisfaction. But again, I think that's a pretty loaded, open-ended question that I'm not really sure that I could, fully answer without specifics at the time.
In terms of roads and transportation improvements, how much more will it prove for longevity in the sense that will there be new materials used and repaved, or will they just be attended to as they are?
So that's a really good question. So right now, the village has a very robust maintenance program for the roads that we have in our existing system. So currently, we have about 17 miles of neighborhood roads within the Marvid roadway system. So those roads are on a maintenance plan rotation, I guess is the best way to say it. So we're doing fog seal, crack seal on roads that we already maintain in order to help extend the life of those roads. So as we're adding new roads, what would happen is if the bonds pass, the roads that we would be taking over would be repaired or repaved, depending on what they need, whatever state they're currently in. That would be taken care of, and then we would put them in the rotation of the maintenance plan.
In the way that transportation is divided up from parks and recreation on the voting ballot, what was the thought process behind keeping greenways and parks together?
So you mean putting the greenways with the roads? Yeah. So it's a question that we've gotten a lot. What we're trying to do is a full transportation package. So we're trying to make the sidewalks multimodal. So if you wanted to ride your bike or ride your scooter up here or walk up here, you'd be able to traverse the village without having to get on the roads. I know that there are some neighborhoods that, may just not want to do that, and that's fine. But again, as we're planning for the village and we were looking at projects as a whole, we weren't planning just for today, just for tomorrow. We're planning for 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road. And we know that the Heritage District is being developed. So we know that there are going to be opportunities to walk to commercial, to a light commercial area. And so we're trying to give the village options on how to get there without having to get into their car and drive.
When will the projects be expected, if the bonds pass, be expected to break ground, and how long will they take?
So if the bonds pass, then we will, before we even get the money authorized, meaning before we even have the ability to pull the money, the village will start, staff will start doing RFPs, RFQs, we'll go out for the bidding process. Council will then look at let me back up. Council will look at the project list. We'll figure out which ones that we can get done as quickly as possible. We would love the input of the village to say, we like this project, we want this done immediately. This project stinks, we don't want to do this one until later or not at all. So if there is input, then we want that input. But once we know kind of what our priorities are, and we already know that roads are a number one priority and neighborhood roads are a number one priority. So with the other things on the project list, we would go out, RFPs, RFQs, the bidding process. And once we get those bids back, then we can make decisions and then we can get those lined up. How long is it going to take? I don't know. It depends on when the contractors are available. If we have to get, certain pieces of information signed off by DOT, if the weather stinks. So there's a lot of things, but again, if it were up to me, I'd do everything the first day so that everybody can see everything that was done and what their money was being spent on.
When can I vote and why is it important to vote?
So early voting starts, I believe, February 15th. and it will run for a few weeks. And then if you wanted to vote on actual election day, that's March 5th. All of the voting information is online so that you can find out if you want to early vote, you can find out where you can early vote. And if you're not sure where you would vote on election day, you can either check the village's website or you can go to the Board of Elections website. And why is it important? Because it's important for you to voice what you want in the village. I think that this council is the most open and the most transparent that has ever been. And we don't get a lot of feedback, quite honestly. Feedback that we get tends to be on Nextdoor, which we don't really look at. Because I want to have a conversation with you and I want to be able to talk something out with you. I don't want to hash something out over social media where people, can just throw accusations and with no repercussions. So if you've got concerns or questions, we beg you to come in and talk to us, and then get educated. And that's really what this bond forum has been for, is to educate you. And then you can make up your own mind on how you want to vote. So yes, get out and vote. Early voting February 15th. And then March 5th is actual election day. Does anybody else have any other questions? Okay, seeing none, I think we're good. Thank you so much for coming tonight.